As a law enforcement officer, he has seen many things. So what happens when he writes short stories based on law enforcement? They become award winners. Join me as I talk to author David Dean on this episode of True Crime and Authors.
Welcome to True Crime and Authors Podcast, where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction. Here's your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of True Crime and Authors. Of course, I'm your man, David McClam. Hey, if you guys haven't done so already, make sure you are following us on all of our social media outlets. One link to a link tree can be found in the show notes of this episode. All right, so if you have been listening and keeping up with the show or looking at your calendars, you know it is yet again time for another author interview. I got a good one for you today. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest. His short stories have appeared regularly in Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine, as well as a number of anthologies, including Best American Mystery Stories, since 1990. His stories have been nominated for the Seamus Berry and Derringer Awards, and Ibrahim's Eyes won the EQMM Readers Award for 2007, as did The Duelist for 2019. His story, Tomorrow's Dead, was a finalist for the Edgar for Best Short Story of 2011. He is a retired chief of police in New Jersey and once served as a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division. He is the author of Tomorrow's Dead. Please welcome David Dean. David, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you, David. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you for being here. It is an honor to get you here and ask you some questions about your book. So let's start. We will be talking about the book that I'm currently still reading, but a lot of good stories in there, which is Tomorrow's Dead. Now, you do have The 13th Child, Starvation K, and The Purple Robe. I know that these are all kind of a little bit different than what Tomorrow's Dead is. Won't you enlighten us a little bit about how you write across these genres and what got you into these?
Yeah, I've really jumped around a lot in terms of genres, especially when it comes to the novels. I haven't been able to stick to one thing. The 13th Child, which you know is a horror novel, it's something of a police procedural built into it, but the story itself is definitely a horror novel. The Purple Robe, a totally different thing altogether. It has to do with a young priest in Mexico who is sent by his bishop to investigate a purported healings in the Yucatan jungle, and so the story spins off from there, and the various parties that become interested in this relic, this purportedly holy relic that he discovers. It does have a religious theme, but it is a thriller. Starvation Key is a straight up just action thriller type deal, and that takes place between New Jersey and the Caribbean, and actually in the Bahamas. So that's been my novels. Most of my short stories, which has been by far the majority of my work, have been crime fiction, have been in some form or another crime fiction, some subgenre of crime fiction, but mostly crime fiction, some horror. I have had a few horror stories published, and as a matter of fact, the beginning of the new year, I'll have a collection of horror stories that will be published by Genuis Books. I don't have a date yet for that firmed up, but I know it's early in the new year.
Now, on Tomorrow's Dead, and the prologue of that, the opening of the book, you state that you went by the old adage, write what you know, being that you are now a retired chief of police. Is 12 procedural stories that deals with various facets of law enforcement. How much of that, if any of it, is real, and what sparked you to do that after retirement?
Well, the theme of the collection is exactly that. It is law enforcement personnel. You have everything from a police chief to a patrol officer to a dispatcher I think there's a prosecutor's investigator, someone from everywhere in the police world. But the stories are all fiction. Some are inspired by events that I was involved with or witnessed or knew of, but all are fiction. Try to represent police work honestly. They're procedural in that sense, but all of them in this collection, Tomorrow's Dead, have to do with law enforcement officers finding themselves very difficult, stressful, and unusual situations. And so that's really kind of the theme. It's both crime and suspense.
So being that where we are in today's world, right, with the police, there's a lot of things going on with police brutality, there's racial issues, defund the police, all that kind of stuff. With you being an ex-police chief, writing these stories, what part of do you feel is relevant today? And I know you were trying to be as honest as you could, even though it's fiction. Where do you sit on those topics right now today with your book?
Well, of course, my career ended 11 years ago. I retired 11 years ago. And so to some degree, I'm out of the picture. But when the stories have been written that are collected in Tomorrow's Dead over a long period of time, from 1990 going forward, I think certainly they represent, in fact, and as a matter of fact, with each story has beneath the title, we put the year that it was originally published. Most were published in Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine. I think they're pretty representative of the time. I don't deal with a lot of racial issues or anything like that. Fortunately, it wasn't. We didn't have any scandals or stuff. We're a small department in a shore community, Jersey Shore, so we could get busy, but we didn't have any issues like that. So most of the stories concentrate on the personal for the officer, not on so much on issues, but on personal things, the stresses, the issues that the common patrol officer faces. So it's mainly hinged around suspense in that sense, that it doesn't always turn out well. Sometimes in these stories, the officers make poor decisions or incorrect decisions based on what they think is a fact or the truth, and it may turn out to be quite different, in the end. And that does happen. You only go with what you know, and sometimes what you know is not the whole story.
So you won several awards. I have to ask because these are not small names of people who read these magazines. Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine, Best American Mystery Stories. Even in the beginning of your book, Ellery Queen Mystery Magazines actually put a review in there for you, which they are praising you highly. What's it like? What was it like when you won all these awards for your writings?
Well, I mean, it's a huge thrill. There's no getting around it. I've written a lot of stories and spent a lot of time writing. You have to bear in mind, this is over a pretty long period of time. Over 30 years now. So it's not like I've garnered an award every time I've put pen to paper, so to speak. That has not happened. So when they do come, they're pretty few and far apart when you really get down to the number of years. But when they do come, there's no denying, pretty much over the moon about it, and thrilled and excited, and do a lot of shouting and stuff in private at the top of my lungs, and I'm very proud to have gotten them. My shelves are not groaning under the weight either. So, I'll keep writing, whether I get the awards or not, until they stop publishing me. I'll keep writing.
So right now you are published by Genuis Books, Stephen and Leah over there. How did you come to find Genuis Books and have them publish you?
Well, it's one of those stories. I was working on The 13th Child on my own. I did not have a publisher. I wasn't even looking for a publisher yet. I had finished the first or second or third draft of it or something at this point, and I thought, well, I should get somebody who really knows something about editing to edit my book, because I should admit to the public here that I have no background. I have no educational background in literature or writing or even English. I have a GED, which I got in the Army, high school equivalency diploma in the Army, and later on got a 2-year degree, associate's degree. This was many years ago, but it's not like this was something that I could just sit down and go, well, I'll edit this and make sure it's like really professionally done. And so I forgot how, but somehow, probably through the internet, I saw that Genius Publishing had a service where they would edit for a fee and all that, a novel or stories, whatever. So I thought, well, I'll give them a try, see what they say. I'll send it to them, and they'll get back to me, the usual thing, tell me how much it's going to cost and all this. They did get back to me, but what they got back to me with was, yes, they would be happy to edit it, but they would like to publish it. And so I was like, wow, that was not what I was expecting at all. It was welcome news. Don't get me wrong. I was like, yeah, that's a good deal, and I don't even have to pay for it. I mean, now they're going to publish it, and they're going to do the editing, and off we were to the races. And they did a bang up job. I thought a really good job. They improved the book. Having a good editor is important. I would caution any writer to just throw a book or a story out there and try to get it published without having somebody who knows what they're doing go over it. But that's how we met. That's how we got together. I sent it to them to be edited, and they said, well, we'll do that, but we want to publish it. That's how our relationship started.
If you look through Genuis Books authors, I've come to find out they don't really have, it's like they have an eclectic collection, but they've handpicked them. And all the authors over there are great. You guys are all friendly. They do certainly have some heavy hitters that I know is going to be number one sellers over there. And they seem to push you guys as writers to bring even more out of you. So it does seem like that they are what I call, they want to jump in from the beginning. That's how they kind of found me. I hadn't even dropped an episode of the show yet. And I know I probably shared this many times, but I was going to interview LaDonna Humphrey, and they were like, hey, we got all these authors. Now, they don't know who I am. They haven't heard anything. My show could be horrible. And they jumped on the bandwagon. And then I got flooded overnight with a lot of you guys. So I'm great to talk to you. If there is any authors out there, I talk to a lot of independent ones, but some of them are on the fence. What would you say to them about going ahead and giving Genius Publishing a try if they're on the fence between staying independent and having a decent publisher?
My advice would always be definitely go with Genius Publishing. I can't say anything but good about them. My relationship with them has been over many, many years now, and they've never steered me wrong. They're good publishers. They're good editors. They're good people. Yes, I would advise any author to go through a publisher if you can. I mean, I do understand it's tough, really hard getting a publisher. And that's true in the short story business too. There's not a lot of venues for short stories, not a lot of markets. For crime fiction, for instance, it's Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine for short stories. Those are Black Cat Mystery. There's another, Lark Press. My point is that it's not a big market, and it is tough to get into. But in terms of novels and things like that, self-publishing is really, really tough. You can do it, and it's a much easier thing to do these days, but you have to also be a marketing expert on your own. And between the writing, the marketing, editing, it can be quite a challenge. Not everybody's up for it. So I would say, yes, go with the publisher if you possibly can get with one, and definitely go with Genuis Books if that's a good fit for you. And you'll know, I mean, they're easy to talk to. Stephen and Leah Booth are very easy to communicate with, and they're very honest. So if it's not comfortable, you can tell them and walk away. If you feel good about it and they want to work with you, I'd say you'll be happy. That's my plug for Genuis Books.
So I will say, when it comes to Tomorrow's Dead, they are very intriguing stories. I like them a lot. I thank you for your honesty in those, being that it is a fiction book. So my question to you is, with all of the knowledge that you have with these awesome short stories you've written that are fiction, have you ever considered writing a nonfiction book?
I can't really say that I have, David. It's just not my thing, I guess. It's the best way I can describe it. I'm just, and the funny thing is that I actually read a lot of nonfiction, particularly history. I read a lot of history, military history, just a lot of history. I really like nonfiction, but it's just not something I'm attracted to writing. Maybe because I spent a lot of time behind the desk writing police reports that after a while it's like, it just got to be work, I guess, is the best way to put it. And so I'm not attracted to it, I guess, is the answer.
So of all the books you've written so far that I've mentioned, The 13th Child, Starvation K, The Purple Robe, and then, of course, Tomorrow's Dead, do you have a favorite of those? And if you do, which one and why?
Oh, boy. Now you're asking which child do I like best? Well, I think overall I'm the most satisfied with The 13th Child, which oddly the first one that I wrote. But yeah, I think overall, I think it the most cohesive, the best put together, the most unusual story in terms of the novels that I've written. The Purple Robe, I think, is an excellent book. Unfortunately, I think its appeal, because of the religious angle, I think may not be as great as The 13th Child. And Starvation Key was probably, of my novel children, my least favorite. It's a good, fun read, but in the end, I thought it was not as good as the other two. Now you've made me single out which child I like best. So they'll never speak to me again.
Here at True Crime and Authors, I read a lot of books. Every author that you've heard me interview and everyone that you will hear me interview, I've either read one of their books or I'm in the process of reading one. So how do I keep up with all of the books that I read? Well, that is where the show's sponsor, Catch Creations 614, comes into play. Catch Creations makes digital handmade planners and journals, and for those who want something on paper, printables as well. She can make anything from My Little Pony to Black Panther, anything that you can creatively think of, Catch Creations 614 can get it done. With excellent customer service and excellent communication, the owner, Kristen, will make sure that your journal comes out right and perfect the first time. And for those who are listeners of this show, you will get a special 10% discount when you use the code TrueCrime10. Catch Creations, best handmade planners, journals, and printables in the business. Check it out now. The one thing I think that is important is you did bring up that you have a GED, but as we see, you did go on to have, you got that from the Army. You had a successful chief of police career. There's some people out here that only has GEDs that feel like because of that, they can't make their dreams come true or they can't do what they want to do. What would you say to folks that feel that way?
I would say it's tough. I mean, when you don't have this stuff, I came from a pretty poor background, and for a number of reasons, I didn't get through high school. I would say, please do stay through high school if you can. That is important, and college, of course, is important. But it's not the end of the world either. The military was a big help to me. The Army was a big help for a number of reasons. Taught me a lot about myself and about self-discipline and all of that. It also does provide, education. You can. But the thing is, there's lots of people. I mean, long before college became like everybody had to have a degree. There was a time in the world, a long time, in which people didn't have degrees. The average person didn't go to college, and they still wrote great books, great stories. It is entirely possible. And if you want to write, I think probably, obviously education's great, and I'd highly recommend it. But I think the main thing is read. Do a lot of reading. I know you read all the time. You mentioned that when we were talking before we started recording. You read every day, I suspect, and a lot. Because that is one thing, education-wise, that I did do. I was always a reader. And always, from the time I was young, I read a lot. Short stories were my favorite, which is probably why I mostly write short stories. Probably also because I have a short attention span. It's easier to write short stories or for me to read them. But I read a lot as a kid, including comic books. all of that kind of stuff. And I think in many ways, like when you become a writer, you need to have a lot of writers in your head already. It really helps a lot to have a lot of books, a lot of stories in your head, not that you for plagiarism, but as just a foundation for you to stand on. I know you can get a lot of this in college, obviously, but if you can't go to college, what you can do is you can read and you can go to the library. And that's what I used to do. Of course, nowadays you can get books on your Kindle and everything. It's just really very easy. But I mean, I spent a big part of my life as a kid in the library, just reading. I don't think you'll find many writers that will disagree with that reading is probably the most important thing they've done right towards becoming a writer.
And I think people this day and age, of course, they have a lot more stuff than what we did. I have a 12-year-old kid, and the first thing he runs to is, I got a book report. Let me go to Safari. And I'm like, back in my day, we went to the library. We even had library time in school where you go down to pick your library books out. And then now I tell all my kids, I go, you guys go to the University of YouTube, because everybody goes to YouTube now to figure out what to do. And the sad thing about college degrees this day and time, my mom used to always tell me when I was young, she goes, if you never go to college, that's fine, because I don't think that by the time you get college age to use it, it's going to be relevant. And I kind of looked at her like, why would you tell me that? And now at 50, I look at some of my friends who has all these degrees and they can't find a job to do anything with them. Like, I got all these degrees and what am I going to do? And, well, I got 3 degrees. Why are you working at Baskin Robbins? Because I can't find anything to put that with. So I do agree with you, even though I do agree that education is important. In this day and times, there is many different avenues that is out there than what we had. And I think everybody should utilize them and never give up on their dreams, regardless of what their educational background is. So I do agree with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was very fortunate too. And I distinctly remember I had a teacher who in homeroom, this is in elementary school, prior to classes starting, she would read to us from a children's novel every day for, I can't remember how long she read, but it was at least like 15, 20 minutes. She'd try to get through a chapter, I think. I remember that my love of reading really started there. Just a teacher reading. In fact, I can even remember the books, The Lion's Paw, Black Beauty, and The Secret Garden. And she managed to get through all 3, the children's versions, but she managed to get through all 3 in my school year. So that was great.
Yeah, as you stated, I do read a lot. All of you guys come on the show. I even read a whole book of yours or reading a book. My wife is getting ready to start what they call I think it's called the loaning libraries, where you put this little library house out in your yard and you fill it with books, and people can come and borrow them for free. And these worked all over the country. We just want to bolster reading for everyone, because I do think it is fundamental. I think it relieves a lot of stress. So if I'm reading a good true crime novel and I'm having a bad day, I realize that my life may not be as bad as somebody else's life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I brought home a couple of books. The last time I went out to spend some time with my grandsons, people across the street had a library, one of the front yard libraries. I came home with a couple of books from them. I had put one of my books in there like the previous year, and I checked and it was gone. So I was happy about that. In fact, it was the 13th child.
So Tomorrow's Dead is listed as Collection Volume 1. Are you working on, or when can we expect Collection Volume 2?
Well, happily, this coming Friday, Volume 2 should be out. It's called The Wisdom of Serpents, Other Tales of Tragic Misunderstandings. It's a collection of short stories. This time it's not law enforcement themed. People in various walks of life who make assumptions or misunderstand something and get into a lot of trouble and then have to try to figure a way out of it or not, as the case may be in each story. We're shooting for this coming Friday and the 11th. That is the 11th, I think. But
it is. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that is the date we're shooting for.
Also known as Black Panther Friday.
Is that right?
Yeah, Black Panther Wakanda Forever comes out that day too. So you're in good company.
Yeah, tough competition, I think.
All right, so what would you want readers to take away from Tomorrow's Dead?
Well, first of all, I hope they're entertained. I mean, because primarily, the role of any writer of fiction, at least, is to entertain. Of course, that doesn't mean, you have to be laughing or rolling on the floor about it. That it keeps your interest. The stories keep your interest. They draw you in. That you find yourself hopefully identifying with the protagonist, understanding, even if you don't agree with what they do. And if it accomplishes some combination or all of those things, then I would be very happy with the outcome.
In closing, is there anything that you would like to say to your readers and fans out there?
Only thanks for reading my stories and novels. Truly blessed. Lonely world being a writer. Every writer will tell you that, and it is. You don't. It's not like you get to hang out with other writers all the time, and it doesn't work that way. You end up spending a lot of time alone writing. Most of the stuff you send out, you never hear a word about it. I mean, if it gets published, that's great, but you may never hear anything much about it after that. So knowing that people are reading my novels and stories is a wonderful thing and a great blessing. So I'd appreciate it if for those that do, and I hope if you haven't, that you might.
Well, David, I do thank you for coming on the show. It has been enlightening. I am really enjoying Tomorrow's Dead. Looking forward to that volume 2 coming out soon. And I wish you the best. Anytime you want to come back on the show, feel free to let me know, and you're always welcome to come back.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate you having me. It was nice meeting you, too.
You too. All right, guys. Well, that was the amazing David Dean. You heard all about his book today, Tomorrow's Dead. You can find Tomorrow's Dead, The 13th Child, The Purple Robe, all on Genuis Books. All of his books is also on Amazon as well. Make sure you go there and buy his books and give him some love. He does deserve it. Also, make sure you drop him some reviews. Authors, whether they're independent or not, they do live on your reviews. Let them know what you want them to put out next. So please make sure you drop him a review over there. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode. Thank you for being with me all this time. If you have any authors you would like me to interview, feel free to drop me an email over at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. I hope you are being safe, and always remember, always stay humble. A little love and compassion goes a long way. And this is the podcast where two passions becomes one. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Authors. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. On Facebook at True Crime and Authors. On Twitter at Authors True. On YouTube and TikTok at True Crime and Authors. And email at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Dazzling_Ray from Fiverr. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild from Fiverr. And I'm the voice guy, your imaging guy from Fiverr. See you next time on True Crime and Authors.